Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode on Drawing and Dragons. My name is Alec, your usual host, and this week I'm doing something very different. The format of this video and the style of this video is going to be a little bit different than I usually do, and I'll be talking more about that at the end of my video. And I want to get right into the action, but before I do, don't forget to give me a like and subscribe right over here. Thank you very much. So rogues. Rogues are known for being stealthy and fast and acrobatic, and they've got lots of skills for outside combat. And in combat, they're known for waiting for the right moment and taking advantage of getting a sneak attack in there when the enemy least suspects it. That's sort of what we know about rogues and what we come to expect when someone plays a rogue. So I want to get right into the player tips. So my first tip for you players is to describe your stuff. I mean, this is what I say in every video, is just to actually describe like what you're doing as a rogue. Right? If you're playing a wizard or a sorcerer, you're going to describe how cool your spells look. If you're playing a warrior or some sort of fighting class, you're going to describe how cool your weapons are when you're slashing and hacking. As a rogue, you're just doing little dinks and little like stabs and things, which yes, you can describe. But you should also describe the cool rogue things you do that are especially roguey. And when I say this, I mean sneaking, I mean lockpicking, and I mean sleight of hand, like quick little things and thieves can't and all that kind of stuff. Describe it. Now, there is some reasons that I think players tend to not do this as much. I feel like rogues are the ones to least describe this part compared to other classes and their sort of activities and things. And it is a legitimate concern. So when a rogue, let's say you are across the room and there's a monster sleeping over there and there's a treasure chest, and the rest of your party's like, hey, go get that chest. Like, go open it up, pick it, and then get the stuff and bring it back to us, right? Like, let's say your objective is to get that thing out of the chest. Now, normally you'd say, okay, I sneak up to it, roll a stealth roll. Okay, good. I get up to the chest. I roll for check for traps. No traps. I open it, grab the thing, sneak back, and we're done, right? Now, that is fine and it's quick and fast, but there's not a lot of flavor, not a lot of description there. And so, if you want to, I'm not saying you have to, but if you want to become more engaged with your rogue and your character and the story and paint a better word picture for everyone around you, consider adding more flavor. Like, I'm going to crawl ahead, hand like on the ground, like belly on the ground. I'm crawling forward as to not draw too much attention. Or maybe it's I'm crouching real low and I'm keeping my cloak drawn across my face, so that way the monster that's sleeping over there, if it happens to look, I can stop and I'll blend in with the black cave wall behind me, right? And then once you get up to the chest, you say, okay, I'm going to take my stick and I'm actually staying back and I'm going to tap around it just to make sure there's no pressure plates or no pressure sensitive traps nearby. And then you say, okay, after that, I'm going to toss some flour at it to see if there's any invisible tripwires. And then finally, you get up to the chest itself and you're tapping it lightly to see if there's any jingling like mechanisms inside that would hint that there's some sort of trigger like mechanical trap inside. And then maybe you're even searching for any arcane runes on it as well that would indicate when it's opened, it'll explode in a fireball or something, right? Now, that's very long winded, and you don't have to do all of that. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is considering some of that. Now, Dungeon Masters, the reason players maybe don't do this as much, and I actually encountered this true story with my player Kane. Shout out to Kane playing Reginald. He came up to a chest and he said, "I check for traps." And then I said, "Okay, well, tell me more about it. Like, what kind of traps are you looking for? How are you checking?" And he said, "Well, no, I just want to check for traps. I don't want to miss anything." I said, "But like, give me some flavor, Kane. Tell me how you're doing this." And he said, "But I don't want to miss anything. Like, I don't want to." Say one thing and miss it. And that it's a legitimate worry, and this is, I feel like, it's just an inherent problem with the game because Kane playing Reginald, he is not actually Reginald. He is not actually a rogue, at least as far as I can tell. He's not actually a rogue, and he's not actually trained in this, and he's also not sitting in front of the chest. He can't see that there's a wire there or not. Like he's not actually in the room. It's not actually real. And that's the problem. That's the inherent flaw with this. So when a player says they just want to check for traps, it's because they're not there, they don't have the skills, and they don't actually have the environment right in front of them visually to see, right? They can't actually use their senses on it. All they have is what you, the dungeon master, say. So how I approach this is I say, okay, You're going to check for traps, but I want you to give me some flavor. I want you to tell me what sort of things is Reginald or whoever character, what are they doing when they're searching for the traps? And that's where Kane said, okay, I'm searching for pressure plates, and then once I get up to the chest, I'm kind of sort of patting it to checking the sides to make sure there's no mechanisms attached. Now, the thing they're worried about, right? This is the reason they don't, is they're worried that if they're like searching for pressure plates, they won't see the tripwire that's right there. So you have them describe it, like I just did, and then you just have them roll for check for traps like normal. They don't necessarily get a penalty if they didn't say, I'm looking specifically for a tripwire connecting the chest to the ceiling and there's a big blade that swings down, right? You shouldn't penalize your players for not looking for that specific trap when they're not actually in the situation. If they want to just check for traps, let them check for traps, but you can ask them to give some description. And players, give some description, okay? You can even say if you're worried your dungeon master doesn't know ahead of time, you can say ahead and say, "Hey, I want to check for traps, but the way these are some of the things I'm doing as I'm checking for traps, right? So it's some of them. So that way, let's say you're searching for pressure plates and you're looking and suddenly you see at the corner of the chest there is an invisible wire. That's always the example I go to because it's like right out of Skyrim, really. And you see this cord, this wire, and it's attached to this hole in the wall, and then you notice there's a blade above, and then you're like, oh well, there's a trap, right? So that's one way that we can work through that and take something that's normally a very quick and mundane action and make it a little bit more exciting with a little bit more flair and a little bit more flavor, and it helps paint a better picture for everyone else at the table as well, not just you. Another thing, players, that you need to consider, a little tip, is that you don't have to be criminal, right? I feel like rogues are inherently criminal just because of their skills and the things that they do, but you do not need to take the criminal background, is what I'm saying, because the background is sort of what were you before you were this, and they can be intermixed, like together, or they could be separate. So you could be, for example, an acolyte, and maybe you belong to a church or religion or temple where it was like all about assassination, right? You're Arya Stark from Game of Thrones. Or maybe it's you were this, so you were an acolyte, and then you realized you enjoyed money too much, and you became a rogue because you left the acolyte stuff behind. Players, you don't have to be a criminal background rogue, but it does line up very well. Criminal and urchin are two, and charlatan. Those are three that line up very well with the rogue skill set and the rogue sort of theme and general idea. All right, Dungeon Masters. Let's get to this is a gameplay one specific, and then I'll get into the world building and all that fun stuff. So gameplay, sneak attack is supposed to happen almost every turn. I'll say it one more time. Sneak attack is balanced around happening almost every turn. Not every single turn, but almost every turn. Because here's the deal. Let's say you're around level 5. Your fighter, party fighter, gets to hit like twice every turn, doing a decent amount of damage. Because they probably got like a 1d10 and they could probably got like 3 or 4 strength, so they're dealing like 2d10 plus 8 damage. That's a lot, if they hit, of course. And then they got some features on their own that can add even more damage to that. And then you've got your wizard who's like tossing out pretty big spells. Like they can toss fireball at this point, like big damage. So if your rogue isn't getting sneak attack, then all they're dealing is like 1d8 plus their dexterity, which is like a +3 or +4. So again, that's like 1d8 plus 4. Like that's a very small amount of damage to dish out. It's still good, but it's very small. So they rely on that sneak attack. That's where their class scales. So if you are like forcibly not allowing your rogue to sneak attack, like either through your encounter design to the point where they just cannot get it, or if it's like you said, oh, I'm banning sneak attack, I don't recommend that. I really don't, because the game is balanced that they actually get it. I've seen this on like Reddit, and like it's a problem where players go on Reddit and they say my dungeon master banned sneak attack. They said I'm overpowered. What the heck? And I say, yeah, what the heck? You should be getting sneak attack almost every round. Now, concerned dungeon masters, if you feel like your rogue is overpowered to the point where your rogue is completely outshining all of your other players, here are some recommendations I have. First off, the reason rogues can get sneak attack is mainly when their big beefy fighter people are up in the front clashing with the enemy, and then your rogue is like way over here shooting them with a bow or a crossbow or something, right? That's the main way rogues get sneak attack, is that their allies are like in melee range with another enemy. So there's a couple ways to work around this. First off, Have the enemies come from multiple directions. You instantly have multiple fronts, and now your rogue can't always get sneak attack. They might help that fighter take that guy down, but then they'll have to worry about the guy coming up right next to him. And that's another thing. Put an enemy rogue on the team who is going to come around and get an actual sneak attack, like they are hidden sneak attack on your party's rogue who's sitting in the back firing shots, right? And that gives the rogue a rival, and suddenly they're like, they have a rogue, and now this rogue, your rogue is suddenly very worried about this enemy rogue who's sneaking around behind them. And that rogue can maybe do disengage and things like that as a bonus action. And it can make it really fun that now they have like this almost rival in the combat. And that's enjoyable. I know personally, whenever I'm playing like any class, and then suddenly I find out the enemy like party, like let's say it's a party of enemy adventurers or something, or kind of similar. If I find out they have a similar class, like if I'm a wizard and they have like a spellcaster, I'm like, that man is dead. That woman, she's going down. Like, so create an enemy rogue who sneaks up on your party's rogue and stabs them real good, just like they do to other people. Also, like I said, just have enemies coming from all directions and having multiple enemies, because then it means less targets. And then your rogue has to choose, do they deal with these immediate threats right around them, or do they shoot that guy way over there by your fighter who would give sneak attack? Because then there's a risk and reward. If they shoot the one that's way over there by your fighter, they will get sneak attack, but they might get hurt by all these other guys around them. Okay, so there's some risk and reward, there's some trade-off there. So those are some ways you can work around sneak attack. And again, it shouldn't be something you're fighting against the whole time. It should be a thing where you create opportunities for it, but then you also create risk and reward and balance for it. All right, it's time to get into world building. This is the part I enjoy the most. So world building, the most obvious thing is a thieves guild. Uh, I mean, honestly, Skyrim, Oblivion, that's where a lot of my like role playing experience comes from, back in video games, right? Thieves guilds were always the coolest because they've got all these lovable asshole characters, and they're all criminals and things, and they all have their different reasons, their different specialties and things. And it's like watching like an Ocean's 11 or Ocean's whatever movie, right? They all have their specialty, and there's something fun about that. And so a thieves guild or some sort of criminal organization is a great way to build your world and allow your players to interact with that. And there's a couple ways you can do that, and a couple different types you can do. So let's talk about the types first. So some types of criminal organizations include a thieves guild. It's a well-established thing, and people know about it. Some people say it's a rumor, but we all know it's real. The Gray Fox is out there, and your players can join it, and there's like a hierarchy, and maybe it's well established in a couple different cities in the area, or maybe across the whole country, or maybe across the whole world, right? It's like a clan, like it's a big thing. Or you could do like gangs, and they're like street gangs, and they're a bunch of rivals and things. So you could definitely have that work out. Maybe these gangs like get into a turf war or something, and your players can choose a side and partake in that. Or you could have like a syndicate, and a syndicate is like a super hidden underground, like a CIA type of a thing, where it's like it's only a rumor and most people don't think it even exists. And then like your rogue has an interaction with one of their operatives or something. They've been like scouted out, they've been noticed, and maybe that syndicate wants them to do a certain job, or maybe that syndicate is targeting that rogue for a certain reason, right? Maybe they're clashing heads there. So consider making one of these different organizations, and then have those organizations interact with the players. What you don't want is to create this thing and then let it just sit there. This should be visible within the game. And you're probably saying, well, how can you take something like a shadow organization and make it visible in the game? Have them do things and the players notice it, right? So maybe your players witness someone being robbed, and your rogue can see, or even if you don't have a rogue, but they can see that this person is clearly a criminal, and then they maybe hunt that person down, and then they find out that they're a part of this bigger criminal organization. Or maybe they are in a tavern, and your party's sitting at a table, and another rogue comes up and uses thieves cant, which we'll talk about in a bit, and uses thieves cant to like connect with them and say, hey, meet me at midnight for a job, right? Something like that. So have it interact. Another great way is to have that criminal organization steal something from players. I will tell you, as a victim of this, there is nothing that makes players' blood boil more than stealing something from them. My dungeon master Kane, shout out once again to Kane, you roguish fella. He once stole like thousands of gold worth of artifacts from us because it was a complicated situation. But we lost that, and we abandoned whatever we were doing. It happened to line up with the quest we were doing, and I don't know if he did that originally or if it was planned, but we abandoned everything and we hunted this son of a bitch down and got our shit back. Like that is all we cared about. So when you have like players and they're in like a city and stuff, have someone steal something from them, even if it's just a couple coins or if it's like a really priceless artifact, they will hunt them down. My players, they had some of their stuff stolen, and they hunted the man down for the next 2 sessions and killed him in cold blood. Another time, some just street urchins stole some coins off of them, like pretty nifty style, and they like ran through the streets and hunted them down and cut off their fingers as a lesson. Like it really drives players to do more. So one way you can have a criminal organization interact with your players is to have them steal some shit from them, and it makes the players so mad, and it's so much fun. It is so enjoyable on the player side and the dungeon master's side. It's like, oh, it just gets right in there, and it's good stuff. It's good stuff. All right, world building, more things though. You could have like an underground market, right? So my in my campaign setting, Nosferatu, the country the players are in, magic is banned, magic items are outlawed. You have to have a certain permit, and there's only like certain reasons you can have one, and so there is an underground market for magic items and things to help hide magic items and other services and things. And they are able to go to this place called the All Seas, and it's an interdimensional, like a pocket dimension. Um, Essentially like a speakeasy, right? They're able to go there, and it's like an interdimensional black market. And essentially, in some of the cities, you go to a certain building and a certain door, and when you go and you use the passcode and you basically do some thieves can't type stuff, you are able to get in, and it connects to all the other ones, and so it's this magical dimension, and it's really cool. And I took the idea from a thing I saw on Reddit, which I'll probably link below. There's gonna be a lot of links below, some great rogue resources. But I saw that and I thought this is great. Like this is excellent. So my players can go there and they can like interact and they can sell valuable things they find there that they can't sell to other people. So having an underground market where your players can sell the valuable things they normally can't sell other places is kind of cool, and it makes them feel like, oh wow, there's a this is a whole world, right? Because that's a real life thing, is to have an underground black market where you sell things that can't normally be sold. The last big world building, this is almost like a dungeon master tip in general, not just world building, but thieves can't use it. Thieves can't is the secret language of rogues, and it can be a spoken language, it can be a sign language, it could be symbols like carved into walls or spray painted or painted on there or something. It could be a certain clothing item your criminals wear. It could be it could be like, for example, if they wear a certain earring or if they wear certain arm bracers. Dale Kingsman will point this out in one of her videos she made about Thieves Cant, and about how like what if you had certain bracers or certain rings, and when your rogue can see that, they would say, oh, that person knows how to smuggle, like that's their specialty, or oh, that person is an assassin. We better not cross paths with them, right? So there are different ways you can take Thieves Cant and like work it into the game. Down below, I have an excellent link that tells you more about Thieves Cant and has some interesting ideas and things. And Thieves Cant is something rooted in the real world heavily. This is a real thing all across different cultures. So I'd suggest Dungeon Masters, if you have a rogue and they seem like they really want to get involved with the story, I recommend you do at least a little bit of research. At least look it down at the links below and try to work in Thieves Cant better for your rogue. Okay, let's get to some homebrew. Okay, I'll try and make this fast. So, first thing is obviously weapons, right? I do this every single time we have a class. I use weapons. Having some cool, nifty weapons that aren't just from the player's handbook would be sweet. To have like a assassin's blade, like from Assassin's Creed, honestly, just go play that game, and there's probably tons of weapons, especially the newer ones. I haven't played them, but I've heard they've got a bunch of fancy weapons, right? Or you could go watch like videos. I've seen a couple videos for some reason on my recommended channel that have like weapons that ninjas used to use and things like that. There are a lot of old weapons and different things that people in medieval times and beyond medieval times that they used to use, and try to incorporate some of those into your game. And you can obviously base their stats off of regular things, but it's the flavor that matters and counts. Things like caltrops and ball bearings, those are things that players usually don't think of actually using, and some do, and they usually work pretty well. I once saw a thing of ball bearings take out a whole group of ogres that were charging, right? So there are different ways you can work with that. Okay, so try thinking of different creative little weapons and things. Let's get to the next one. Potions, specifically poisons, right? Every rogue wants poisons. I'm sorry, but every single rogue I've ever had, I think, mentions at some point, hey, can I use this as a poison? Or hey, we found this poison. Can I dip my dagger in this thing? Can I stab people with this? Yes, right? There are a lot of poisons in the Dungeon Master's Guide, and there are a lot more on the internet that you can find. There are tons of resources out there. I don't have any personally saved, but there are a lot where you can find lists and lists and lists and lists and lists of excellent poisons and creative poisons and things. And you can make some up on your own. Right, there are tons of ideas and tons of ways that you could take a poison, so that way they can like coat their dagger in it, and when they stab the next person, there's some extra effect that happens. And you do need to watch out and be careful, because some of those can make your rogue extra powerful. So you need to consider it in the same way that you would be considering giving your wizard a powerful scroll. Right, that's sort of the similarity here. That's where they are equal in that way, because it's a limited use, potentially additive, powerful thing. And what you need to consider, though, as far as your own rules go, is how many uses can they have? If they have like one vial of minor poison, how many times can they coat their blade in it? How many arrows can they stick in it? And how long does it last before it goes bad? Either within the bottle or like on the blade, right? If they coat their dagger with it, if a day later, if it's dry and stuff, is it still going to have the same effect? Up to you. My last homebrew thing, I know that's kind of short, but my last homebrew thing is execution rules. So there is a very big like archetype and a very big fun fantasy of this roguish character who infiltrates the noble's mansion, and there's a bunch of guards on patrol, and they take them out one by one with like a slit throat and muffled, and they kind of drag them backwards, right? There is that sort of thing that people have. Like, it's a fun fantasy that every rogue wants to be able to pull off at some point. Like, you sneak up to the camp of bugbears and you find one of them sleeping kind of on the outskirts, and you slit his throat right in his sleep. You have to think about, how do execution rules work? Because let's say it is a bugbear, for example. If your level 2 rogue goes up to that and rolls an attack roll, and they roll their damage, they're not going to kill it, more likely than not. But that also doesn't necessarily make sense flavor and narrative wise, that they have a dagger at their throat. They should be able to just slit it and be done with it. It depends a lot on the beast you're fighting. If you're fighting a dragon, no, I'm sorry, you're not going to be able to go up to a sleeping dragon and just slit its throat. You could maybe stab it in the eye or something. That'd be much better, right? But you do need to think of execution rules and how you want to handle it. Personally, for me, what I do is I have them roll an attack, and then I look at the enemy's capabilities and stats, and I say, is this enemy very strong and very capable? Then they probably won't be able to do it. I might roll a dice and just roll a d20 to set sort of a difficulty, and if the player beats it, they're able to do it. If they don't, they don't. If it's someone who is up and on watch, like a guard, let's say, in a hallway of a mansion, the player has to roll really high on their stealth in order to get right behind that guard in order to like actually slit their throat. Like, they have to do very well on a stealth check. Otherwise, the guard will have that split second where they know something where they can like react and something is coming, and that's where I will roll for the guard to try to essentially wrestle with the player. Like, the player's about to come up and slit their throat, and the guard's like, huh, and they like kind of wrestle. They hold the knife, back and forth. You can create a narrative situation. That's where you actually would then roll for initiative, right? So consider, how would you handle execution rules, and then have an open conversation with your players. That's the most important thing, is that you need to have a conversation, because if you get to that point where it happens and then you rule one way and you're hard fast about it and your players don't know, then they might be upset with that. But if you rule one way and then say, what do you guys think about this? Does this seem fair? And then if you present this, if they're like, no, I want to be able to kill him right away, duh. If you say, well, do you feel like that's fair that you're killing this super strong thing with just a simple knife cut, right? So it's a conversation that you can have with your players, and should have, really. I want to thank you very much for watching, everyone. If you've stayed this long, awesome on you. please don't forget to give me a like and subscribe right here. And I want to briefly talk about why I made this video this way. So normally my sort of formula is I do the dip where I talk about the basic concepts, like super basic, and then I go into the dive, and that dive includes a lengthy talk about the subclasses, which is usually about like 6 minutes long. And my videos are just too long, frankly. I record this video like 4 times now because I just was not happy with it. And I've been a little bit unhappy with the rest of my videos and how I've been making them simply because on paper, the dip and dive sounds like a good idea, right? Oh, the dip is where I'll be able to, give the basic ideas, and the people that just want a really quick video with key points, they can watch that 3 minute to 5 minute piece, and then they can dip out, and then the people that actually want to hear the more in-depth stuff, they can stay and do the deep dive with me. So on paper, it sounds like a great idea. Phenomenal. Genius, some might say. But it ends up being more like people just kind of wait for those other few minutes to go, and if they're not entertained by them, they leave, right? So what I'm going to be doing from now on is just be calling the series Deep Dive. Okay, it still holds the same D&D acronym, but it also allows me to just talk about the good stuff. Because frankly, this is the stuff I like talking about. I like talking about the player tips, the dungeon master tips. I like talking about the homebrew and the world building considerations. Like, these are the things I like to talk about when it comes to these topics. So in my future class videos, I've only got a couple left, like maybe like 5 or 6. In all of those, I'm going to be doing it like this, unless I hear a major uproar that people miss the dip and the dive, right? So if you do want me to cover the sort of dip and go back to the previous formula, let me know down below. Otherwise, this is how the videos are going to be in the future. Thank you very much if you stuck it out this far. I do have a Twitter, by the way. I do tweet out when I've got a video coming up or my thoughts, and I do ask questions on there and other things. So if you want to interact with me more in depth, feel free to comment below, but also check out my Twitter. It is simply just Dungeons and Dragons or Dungeon and Drag or something like that. It is down in the description below as well, and probably on the screen right now. Otherwise, have a great rest of your day. See ya.